wrapping my arms around him, resting my face, the nape of his neck, smelling his body odor, and just holding on to him. On some level, I knew it would be the last time I would see him, but I just did not want to believe it. And then he put me down and walked off into the sunset with the soldiers. The gods had painted the sky of just gold, red, orange, brilliant sunset. And I wonder why there could be such beauty when there was only hell on earth. Behind us in this building, all along the floors, are pictures of victims and prisoners who were brought here. And when they're first brought in, they take them, they photograph each of them, and then they document what kind of tortures and methods were used on them and confessions they elicit. And then pictures often are taken of the victims after they've been tortured and hurt. If your picture showed up on these walls, it means you were tortured and killed. And I just really don't want to see it. I really don't know what happened to my father. God forbid if I walk through it and in Cambodia today, they've discovered an estimate of 20,000 mass graves. In a lot of these mass graves are the skulls of somebody's parents, somebody's fathers, sisters, brothers. Majority of them were killed with a blunt instruments smashed to the back of their heads. I don't want to know what happened to my father. I don't want to know where he ended up. I don't want to know if he could have been one of those skulls. I choose to believe that he was killed with a quick bullet to his head. A couple months after the soldiers had taken my father away, my mother gathered all my siblings around. There were 4 of us at this time, and said that we had to leave her. I was barely 8 years old. My sister was 10, my brother was 13, and she said, I can't take care of you. Leave, you go in different directions. Find an orphanage or a children's camp, pretend you're an orphan, take different names, don't come back, pretend I'm dead already. I was so angry at her as my brothers and sister and I marched off. I thought she was weak. She knew that the soldiers were not only targeting fathers and brothers of people they believed were traitors and killing these people en masse. She knew that they were going to go back and target the wives and the children of the people they'd killed. She must have believed that if all of us couldn't survive, she was going to make dang sure that some of us would. And that was her way of saving our lives. It's taken me so many years to know that she was the strongest woman I'll ever know. I just can't imagine what it must have been like to send up your kids into the war zone, not knowing if they would be killed, raped, tortured, if you would ever see them again. But you know that you had to do it because the chances of them being with you was more danger than of sending them out into the war zone. She had told us to go in separate directions and live separately. And my sister and I just couldn't part from each other, my sister Chou. And we walked, and the two of us ended up at a child's work camp. We were in the middle of nowhere in a very rural village, and there was no electricity, no running water, no outhouse. Basically, they were just thatch roof houses with long planks where 30, 40, 50 kids would sleep together in one planks and huddle like sardines in a camp. Other kids would make fun of me and about my light skin color or call me names, and I would just beat them up. And the women supervisors saw that and decided that there was a better place for me. And instead of just expending my energy in a rice field, she plucked me out from that and put me at another camp, a child soldiers camp. I would be taken out and be trained with guns and knives and sticks and sickles and anything else out there that could be used as a weapon to hurt and to kill. I was encouraged to hate. I was, when I hurt people, I was rewarded by being given more food. The more aggressive I became, the more hateful I became, the more food I was given. I was 8 years old. I had no protection. I had no guardians. I had no one looking out for me. I had to be my own guardian, protector, and survive on my own. And the rage really helped me do that. I woke up one morning and just felt in my gut and in my being that something was wrong. And I needed to see my mother. I wanted to see my mother. So I left the camp and made my way there. But it was a good half a day of walk with no shoes, no food, not really knowing where I was going. And I just walked. I just walked in my mother's direction. When I got to the village, someone was living in my house already. And it was shocking because I was expecting my mother. And I asked the woman where my mother was, and she said she didn't know, and that the soldiers had came for my mother and 4-year-old sister. And I just got really angry, was really scared, and that was the last thing I can remember. I don't know what happened. I don't know where I went. I don't know what I ate. I don't know how I slept. I don't know if I was abused during that time. I just remember waking up 3 days later back at my camp. And I, to this day, have no memories of those 3 days. When I woke up, I knew then that I didn't have to pretend to be an orphan anymore, that it was indeed a fact. You know, after my father, there was still a hope that we could get back together and the war would end and we could go back home and I would have my sisters and my mother and we could be a family. And then my mother was taken and my brothers were somewhere, I didn't know where, and I was alone. It was just, I just knew it would never be the same. At this time, the Vietnamese troops were encroaching into Cambodia. I only knew it was happening because the bombs were getting closer and closer. Until one night it hit. It hit our shelter. Our shelter was on fire. I had to leave or I was going to be burned to death. So ran onto the road and I headed for my sister's camp's direction. They were, at this time, everybody was running away and there were a lot of people on the road and I just ran, found a rock next to the side of the road and sat on it and just sat and waited. And then there was my brothers and sister, Kim and Chou. And then we were reunited, just as if somebody was guiding us together. At this time, to the rest of the world, it might have lookkt like the Khmer Rouge was no longer in power and that we Cambodians on the ground would be safe. But it wasn't so. There were landmines, there was no economy, there was no food. My brother was 14, my sister was 12, I was not even 10. We had no parents, we didn't know how to survive. And we would just follow people. You know, we slept on the streets and caught what food we had, and when we didn't find food, we'd steal food and slept on the roads under the stars, and we just kept on surviving. My brother Kim would go and try to find food. On days he didn't go find food, he would go to the arrival area. And then one day he went away and waited and came back with another person. And I remember looking, thinking, the person looks so familiar. Wow, that couldn't be. That's my brother Ming. But it can't be, because as much as you hope, as much as I hoped, I just kind of thought he would be dead too.
When I found them, I was very happy, and we all very happy, because we really do not know who's still alive and who's gone.
He put his hand on my head the way my father used to do, and it was my brother, and he was alive, and he was there, and then he took us home with him.
It's a very heavy responsibility, because I have 4 brothers and sisters to take care, and after the war I have nothing left, and it's very hard. I have to start from scratch.
During that time, there were 2 ways out of Cambodia. You had to walk the land route and cross the mine-filled borders, or you save some money, buy a couple of seats, and get on a boat to go from Cambodia to Vietnam, Vietnam to Thailand, where there were refugee camps. And Ming didn't want to take the risk of all of us trying to make it to Thailand by walking the minefields. And so he decided that he was going to risk and take the boat route. And we could only find enough gold and money to buy 3 seats. Ming, his wife, and he had to take a sibling. He decided to take me. I was the youngest, and therefore would have the most opportunity to take advantage of the education system and have more time to rebuild myself and rebuild my future. On the day I was to leave, my brother had a bike and had a pile of clothes, and I was sitting on top of that, and I'm all ready to go, and he's climbing on, and Chou still has my hand. And I was just so sad, and she's crying, and her tears just flowing down her cheeks and onto her shirt, and her hands sweating, and she's holding onto my hand. And I didn't know how to let go. And then my brother started pedaling away, and our hands were basically torn apart. We got onto this